What's going on, everyone? Moose here, Airguns of Michigan, and today I'm going to do a follow-up to my slug video that came out yesterday. And I want to talk a little bit about the importance of why we buy air guns, or why we buy specific air guns, right? And why making an educated decision before purchasing an air gun is so important. So, and I just want to say, when I started out into PCPs, I had a few air guns that I just thought, you know what? I gotta have those guns. I have to have that gun. That is the only gun that I want. But yet, I didn't take into consideration all of the other factors of purchasing X gun, right? Whatever gun that was. So I want to talk first and foremost about why do we buy air guns? Well, number one, if you're not buying an air gun for accuracy, then you're throwing your money out the window, and what's the point in buying an air gun? If you buy an air gun, I don't care how beautiful it looks, how well it fits you, how good it sounds when it shoots, how quiet it is, how amazing everything feels. If it isn't accurate, what's the point? Whether you're target shooting in your backyard, plinking some beer cans, whatever, or hunting, your number one priority in an air gun should be accuracy. It shouldn't be, well, I bought X gun because that's what everybody else loves. Or I bought X pellet because that's what everybody tells me to shoot. Or I bought X slug because everybody tells me to shoot that. If you can't hit the broadside of a barn, then what's the point? One thing that I always try to relay to people is, at 25 yards, any air gun worth its grain, or its weight in salt, should be able to shoot a 1/4 inch group roughly at 25 yards. It's just a fact. Most of mine can. I mean, it's almost just one small jagged hole at 25 yards for good accuracy. It doesn't mean that all of them do. Some of them don't. You know, you take into consideration, like my Diane's Chaser. This thing shoots great at 10 yards, 25 yards, it's pushing its luck. It's still relatively accurate, but it's not as accurate as some of my other air guns. So there's a reason for that gun. That's a great gun to take out into the backyard, shoot at 10 to 15 yards, you know, hit some of the little dangling, you know, targets that they make for pellet guns, and just have a good time. It's great for the kids, you know, it's relatively inexpensive to shoot. But if your idea is that you want to shoot at 100 yards and you want to shoot accurately at 100 yards, then you need to purchase an air gun that's capable of doing that. Something that's tunable, something that's regulated, something that, you know, you've seen the results of. I've bought so many air guns, and you know, being a content creator, I do buy a lot of air guns because I just want to see what they can do. And if you guys look back through some of my videos, you'll see that some guns I only test up to 50 yards. And the reason that I do that is because when I shot 100 yards, it's just not accurate. It's just not practical. It shoots great at 50 yards, but at 100 the groups open up to a point where, number one, I wouldn't think that it was capable of shooting, you know, accurately enough that it's worth it, Or B, if it was a hunting gun, you know, I mean, heaven forbid that you wound an animal and send it into a hole where it can just die a slow death. That's the most unethical thing you could ever do. You know, if you watch the airgun hunting channels that are out there, and there's a great many of them, I love them all. You know, it's all about ethics. It's all about making sure that we dispatch whatever pest or critter that is in the greatest fashion that we can with the least amount of, you know, error. Does it mean that you might get a gust of wind that pushes your pellet off? No, it doesn't mean that. Accidents like that do happen. I'm not saying that every shot that's ever been taken has been as accurate as it should be, but it was done with ethical standards behind it, right? It was done with the understanding that my gun is accurate at 100 yards or 150 or 200 or 250, right? So if a shot veers off and wounds an animal, you know, but yet that gun is ethically capable of doing it, that's a mishap. I understand those. But generally, there's a good follow-up shot that dispatches that animal. But once again, if you're buying an air gun and your number one priority isn't accuracy, then what is it exactly that you're looking for? You know, I see so many people that are like, man, I'm producing, you know, 86 foot-pounds of energy out of my whatever caliber, 25 cal. Well, that's great. But is it accurate? And some of you are watching this video right now going, hell yeah, man, dude, you're keyboarding. Listen, slow down. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying some people, the only thing they care about is how much energy they can produce out of a gun, not how accurate is that gun. So when you're thinking about buying a gun, there's a lot of different things that come into play. What is considered accurate, right? I would call accurate at 100 yards for the average shooter a 2 to 3 inch group for target. For hunting, I would say you need to be tighter than that. Those are just my opinions. Everybody's got one. I'm not mad at anybody for having a different opinion. But for hunting, what would I consider accurate at 100 yards? MOA or less. 1 inch, 100 yards, and understanding your gun and holding for windage and being able to dial that gun or use holdover to ensure an accurate shot. You know, these guys out there that are shooting bench rest competitions, you know, they don't go out and just randomly grab a gun and then show up and go, well, today I'm going to shoot bench rest. No, those guys buy a gun, tune that gun, and then practice nonstop. I shoot a lot. I have to. Otherwise, I'm not going to be as accurate as I can be. You know, muscle memory, always being in the same position, the same way you pull the trigger, all those things, it all equates to accuracy. The type of pellets that I use, all equates to accuracy. You know, I see guys all the time, man, oh, I use H&N this, or I use FX this, or I use, you know, JSB this, and nothing the matter with any of them. But they've never tried a different pellet, or like my last video, a different slug, because that's what their buddy uses, or that's what somebody on a forum said to use. Are you getting the greatest accuracy you can get? I don't know. But once again, back to why we buy air guns. If you're not buying an air gun for accuracy within its limits, then you're wasting your money. If you go out and buy, you know, I'll just throw it out there. I got a Hudson Bull Boss. It does relatively well at 50 yards. If I take that gun out to 100, and it's regulated, I added a Huma regulator to it. If I take that gun out to 100 yards, it's not that great. And I've tried every type of ammunition that I can in .22 caliber for that gun. At 50 yards, it's great. If I was going to use that gun for hunting or target, I would say 50 yards and less. Now, I know, once again, here we go. There's a bunch of you guys out there with Hots and Bull Bosses that are like, dude, the Hots and Bull Boss is the greatest gun in the dang world, and I'll go up against an FX any day of the week, and I'll smoke them at 100 yards. Okay, put your video out there and show us. Or just realize that sometimes a gun that is capable of being tuned just a tad bit better with a superior barrel is going to shoot more accurately. Just throwing that out there. I know, and listen, I'm not a super Hotson hater or anything like that. I'm just using it as an example because it's a gun that I own, and I've done a ton of work to that gun. And like I said, it's a great shooter at 50 yards, maybe 60, even 75, but out to 100, the groups just don't stay together the way that they do if I'm shooting one of my other guns. Doesn't matter which other gun, I'm just simply saying. You know, the Hotson Invader, that gun is great at 50 yards. It's great at 25 yards. It sucks butt at 100 yards. Just is what it is. It's a non-regulated gun for now. Throw out a little bit of sneaking in there. It's just a fact. So, you know, like I said, if you're buying a gun because it looks cool, you're probably not buying the right gun. If you buy a gun because you've done your research, you've watched the YouTube content out there, you've been to the forums and really listened to what the actual shooters are finding, then you're making a good decision. But please, don't go and buy a gun just because, you know, it's cool. Gotta have a Benjamin Aquila because it's the coolest gun in the world, but you never shot one. Well, how do you know it's going to work for what you need? So do your research, buy a gun that is going to fit your needs, how far you want to shoot, and most importantly, is accurate. There's a lot of guns out there that just are not that accurate. If you're shooting a 2-inch group at 25 yards, your gun is not accurate. I got news for you. It ain't accurate. It's not. Don't care. You can keyboard jockey me all day long. It ain't accurate. If you're shooting 4-inch groups at 50 yards, then it's dead calm. And I'm not talking about wind and all that. I'm not saying that you're being affected by wind. But if you're shooting a 4-inch group at 50 yards, your gun is not accurate. It's just a fact. So there's no other reason to buy an air gun, or any gun for that matter, unless it's accurate. It's got to be able to hit what we're aiming at. Otherwise, you know, take the scope off of it, take the rail off of it, take the open sights off of it, and just wing it. Then I'll call you, you know, you can shoot a 2-inch group with no sights whatsoever at 50 yards. Yeah, good. Then you got it down. But if you're looking through a scope and you can't shoot a 1 or 2-inch group at 50 yards, your gun's just not accurate. And, you know, that can be a problem. You know, realistically, at 50 yards, you should be shooting 1-inch groups. It's accurate. So, those are just my thoughts, man. I see a lot of people out there that, you know, I talk to people and they're like, well, you know, I think I'm going to buy a Hotson, or I'm going to buy, you know, a Gammo, or I'm going to buy this because I saw one video out there and the guy was just like, blah, 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 it's the greatest gun ever. But you look at the guy's groups and you go, that's not that impressive. Maybe for you it is. You know, if you're shooting milk jugs at 25 yards and to you that's an accurate shot, buy any gun. Should be able to hit a milk jug at 25 yards. Me personally, and everybody else I know, we buy air guns for accuracy. And we do whatever it takes to get those guns to be as accurate as possible. And I do have some guns that no matter what I've done, they're just not accurate. And they sit by the wayside. Then I go out and find a gun that is accurate. So with that being said, I'm Moose. That's my 2 cents. Don't hold it against me. I'm simply trying to get you guys to realize that don't go off of X, or my buddy's got one and oh, he's awesome and blah, and he's shooting, you know. Find a gun that is going to be accurate, that you can watch multiple videos on, see what these guys are realistically shooting them at, and do yourself a favor so you don't waste a ton of money. Alright, might not be your dream gun by looks, but it's gonna be the gun that makes you happy. So until next time, I'm Moose, this is Airguns of Michigan. Be good to each other, and God bless.